Forgot. You remembered and I forgot.
Well, this is, and this is really this should be called the John Long session because it's all about sharing your personality.
Oh,
Which is good. So we're going to go through I'm going to provide 15 examples, and we'll talk about how we can share our personality through the screen in a variety of ways. And hopefully, some of you will have some ideas, or, obviously, John, you got the hat. And so we have examples of how to do that. I love Rosa's avatars. That's actually something that's underutilized, but I do it quite a bit,
oh yeah.
where you change the image that is on your Zoom. And I do it actually, like if I turn off my Zoom now, you should see building an online course. So I do these, I change up the image so that it actually, you're welcome, Rosa. It actually promotes some of the stuff that I'm working on. But it also can be a great way of, showing your personality. Maybe it's a picture of you with students. Maybe it's a picture of you in a work setting, or at a, for me, from a tourism perspective, if I wanted to show off a picture of me in a particular place, it's just a way to communicate. Or, Zia Lynette could do one that has, her in some fun place, tropical place with family. These are the ways that we communicate our personality. And so I want to start off by just reinforcing why it's important. I'm trying not to be a broken record, but I am seeing more and more things that are scaring me because of the way that some institutions are handling higher ed this fall in terms of COVID. And I am 100% certain that the schools that put more effort into improving the quality of online and remote instruction, they're going to be the winners. And the students, as a result, are going to be the winners because they're going to get a pretty good experience. Unfortunately, you have a lot of stuff out there that is kind of chipping away at what online education is. I mentioned the Scott Galloway thing. But I think we can get past it. One of the things I didn't mention in the last session is that they were quoting all these schools that put millions of dollars into online education. And I'm thinking to myself, what do they spend millions of dollars on? I'm not going to talk about St. John's, but there's one institution that's down the road from me, and they spend $2 million in improving online education. I don't know what you could spend that on, unless Blackboard or Canvas is just super expensive to add a couple bells and whistles, but we had already paid for that. That was already part of or I'm saying that that's already part of the overhead for an institution. They already have those contracts. So, I would love to see what, $1 million would do. If I had even, let's say $100,000. I don't even know what I would do with $100,000, but I would make sure that all the faculty, that all the departments have a little bit of money to pay for better microphones and pay for better cameras if they need them. And so if John said, oh, I need I'm going to be teaching from home. My camera's not that great. I would like to improve the experience for the students. And so that the departments would have a little bit of leeway. Yeah, I could see some hardware, but I'd buy that stuff in bulk, get a good price. The Logitechs are not that expensive. Microphones, I mean, most faculty have pretty good setups to begin with. But then the rest of the money, yeah, you might have to pay for some upgrades with Canvas, WebEx, Zoom, Blackboard, etc. But we're not talking millions of dollars. And then I would actually put some money into incentivizing faculty to be creative and to do some neat things. And I would put some money into awards and stipends to give to faculty, not to teach online, but they're already get paid. That's already part of the budget. But I would put money into awards. So if Chris does amazing work online, and we put it out there, I would put some money into prizes. I would buy there's these really great microphones, the Snowball by Blue. It's a beautiful microphone. I think I'm going to get one. I would get those and I would give them out as prizes. I would give out stipends. I would do all these fun things. I'd get some fun shirts and hats made and give them out to the faculty. But I just don't know what these schools are talking about when they say that they spend all this money on online. I do hear a lot of institutions spending a lot of money on retrofitting their campus for COVID. And then I'm like, well, and then you go online a week later. You go remote a week later. What was the point? So that's why it's so important that we have our personality through the screen for the students to engage them, because if they don't have a good experience, they are going to complain and they are going to sue because they didn't pay 50 grand a year, or they don't pay 50 grand a year to get a correspondence course. And that's the hard part. And there are some schools that are doing very, very badly in this regard. And we'll know a lot more about it over the next few months because it'll be in the media. Sad but true. I think the priorities are a little bit, well, there are institutions, and I understand that it's difficult. Institutions have millions of dollars of investment in residence halls and dining plans, et cetera. And if they don't get the students on campus, they can't make money off of that. I get that. But I think that's the short game. The long game is doing everything you can in your power to safeguard your faculty, staff, and students so that there's a school they can come back to and that they want to give money back to because they had such a great experience. So I think we'll see this. This is going to be, the next 2 decades are going to be pretty thorough. Oh, we lost Zeta Lynette again. All right. So how do we communicate our personality? So let's start with John. So John's got the hat. The y'alls or the yeahs?
Y'all.
The y'alls.
Y'all. The y'all.
You want to tell the story real quick?
Well, sure. There's a town in Kentucky, Florence, Kentucky. It's right across the Ohio River from Cincinnati. And Interstate 71 and Interstate 75 go right straight through the middle of the little town. And they have a water tower that's in sight of that combined interstate. And instead of just putting Florence on their water tower, somebody put Florence, y'all. Florence, y'all. Y''ALL. And so every time I've driven that highway and I've been on the road and weary and I look up and see Florence, y'all, I smile. And a few years ago, some do-gooders, PTA or I don't know, ministers' wives or something, got together and said, that makes us look like hicks. We got to get the y'all off of there. And there was an uprising, and the y'all stayed. And because that's their brand. What other water tower have you ever seen that said y'all on it? And then they got a minor league baseball team, and they had to come up with a name that said something about the town. So the minor league baseball team in Florence, Kentucky is the Y'alls. And there it is. Let's see. There it is.
Yep.
Right there.
That's awesome. The Y'alls.
Yeah. So that's in copy editing, that's an example of just the right word. Somebody thought it was just the wrong word. But in writing a headline or editing a story, you want to make the words sing and dance. And there are 50 words that could be correct, but only one of them is just the right word. And this is an example of that. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
And so it's a good, it's a good way to connect with the students. You tell that story in class, well, professor, why are you wearing that hat? And then you tell the story, you connect with students on a variety of levels. One, the type of town that you described. Two, it might be the state that they connect with for one reason or another. Three, it might be baseball itself. Four would be hat fashion. You know, that's a big thing. You have a lot of students that collect hats and unique hats, and they have their collections. And the list goes on. But it's just a matter of, it's a great way of showing your personality, being able to communicate that you're more than just a professor talking about copywriting. And I think that we need to be intentional about offering these things up each week. Okay, and so I'm gonna share my screen and provide an example of things that we can do. And these are resources that are available on the same site with all the information about the sessions. I created this for a conference down in South Carolina in March, and it was so close to COVID, you know, changing the world, well, at least in North America, that people, you know, some of those people that were supposed to be at the conference, we were getting reports, oh, they couldn't go because their school just shut down. You know, their school just froze all travel. There was a school, well, my alma mater, Clemson, right down the road, there was supposed to be a big contingent from Clemson, but they were told that they could not travel like the day before that the conference started. But I went down, I paid for myself, so it didn't matter. But I did a couple programs, and one of the programs, I ended up creating some visuals, and the whole idea, the whole theme of the conference was growth and trees and earth and all that stuff, having to do with online pedagogy. And so I did a whole session on personality, and the idea was, what kind of teacher do you want to be? Do you want to be the teacher that is remembered, or do you want to be the teacher that is forgotten? Do you want to be the teacher that connects with students, or do you want to be the teacher that is, you know, just a figurine and nothing more? And so I came up with this one list, and you'll see it on the right. Hopefully it's big enough for you to see all. There we go. There you go. So these are 15 things that you can drop in at different times in your conversations with students. It could be in an email, it could be in a video, the intro video for the week. It could be during your class session if you're doing remote. It could be during your office hours. It really is pretty loose in that respect. But these are just some things, and I'm not gonna read all of them, but you can see them. And these are some of the things that I've mentioned before, you know, things like pets, you know, and I joke about, you know, people having their animals around them, but if they're doing a course from home and they have a dog, a cat, a ferret, a fish, whatever, don't be shy about showing that pet to your audience, because they will connect on a different level. I mean, I'm a sucker for puppies and cats and pretty much all animals. You know, if you put one of those in the screen, I'm going to perk up. I'm going to pay attention a little bit more, because this is something that's important to me. In the same way that, you know, I love it when presenters, their kids will jump in, and like last week when we had Tim's son Max wanted to say hi, and he's like putting his hand up, and he wants to be in the screen, and he wants to say hey, and I said something about Max, you know, going nuts, and Max went nuts. And so it was kind of this fun you know, back and forth that you can have by including a kid or somebody else, or spouse or partner, or, you know, anything else that's in your home, sharing that with your students. Dropping in places you've traveled to, talking about favorite books, favorite movies. These are things that are small, you know, in you know, in retrospect, it's very small, but it's a way, again, to connect with the students. What are some, let me ask this, I'll make it a little bit more interactive here. Chris, what is, one of your top 3 movies?
Well, my top 3 movies, let me see. Spartacus, the original with Kirk Douglas.
Yeah.
Let me get 3. This is a little bit difficult. Washington Square, the adaptation of the Henry James novel. That's an oldie. And then how about Return of the Jedi?
There you go. Okay, so that's a good diverse 3. Now, my guess is that the students may not connect with the first 2. Spartacus, they might. I think Spartacus is, it has very cool connections to a lot of, to a lot of different things. But, I think you can work that in a few ways. And especially if you get to show a clip of something and relate it to something in the class, you can say, this is, I had to use this clip because this is one of my favorite movies. And this is why I love it. I mean, Kirk Douglas, you may not know it, but that's Kirk Douglas related to Michael. You can have some fun with it. And then obviously with Star Wars, anything Star Wars, Return of the Jedi is a classic. I think 10 years ago, there are more students connected to Star Wars. Nowadays, I don't always feel like they are as much, but I think there's still enough there. And with Disney Plus and this access to Star Wars being increased, like the Baby Yoda, all that stuff, you can work that in as well. So, have you ever talked about some of your favorite movies in class, Chris?
Actually, I whenever I make a reference to something, it's generally more likely to be TV. I did during my Breaking Bad phase make a lot of references to that show because it speaks in a way, I think, to teachers like who maybe have a dark attraction to Walter White. But I show a lot of movie clips in class, but they generally are either documentaries because I deal with religious history, or they're sort of adaptations of sort of classical biblical themes. So Jesus Christ, Vampire Slayer. I find that your comments about, I think, the shelf life of movies and the accompanying generational gaps are getting harder for me to bridge. Students, years ago screened like a Hitchcock film and they thought it was schmaltzy. So, I have to live vicariously through my teenage daughters, I guess, and maybe try to figure out, even if I don't get a TikTok account, some more contemporary hooks and then lead them into what I think might be more edifying cinema.
No, that's good. And I think that, you resolved it in one way. I think it's tapping into the younger people around us. Sometimes they'll give us the answers that we need and the variations that we need. What's a more recent version of this? This is what I'm trying to convey to the students. And they'll say, oh, well, that's kind of like, and then you can take that and use it in your course. The other thing, the other angle that you can take is the reverse, where you flip it for the students and you describe something. You can share something that you're really into, like Spartacus, and describe you can describe what it is about it that you like or how you connect it to the course. And then you can flip it for the students and say, now's your turn to, share that kind of a thing with me. And so you get the students to be the content creators or the content finders. And it actually helps you out too, because then you can use some of the examples that they bring forth in the next time you deliver the course. And so it gets students in general, people like to share things that are important to them. They like to share, their fascination with this or their hobbies or their interests. So if you describe a particular thing with a movie, say with Spartacus, maybe there's a particular scene that stands out because it illustrates something that you're trying to teach in class. You say, can you think of another, can you think of either a movie or a show that depicts this type of situation. Find it, post it, and we'll talk about it at some point. Chris, are you teaching remote or fully asynchronous?
I'm fully asynchronous. Well, I am basically remote. However, given some of the things I'm learning, I am probably going to have a lot of asynchronous material if things go south on the tech front.
Sure. So you can base everything in a discussion board and have everybody post clips, share them, and that's a good way to do it. And then you can touch on some of those things during office hours, for instance, if you gather the students. But either way, you get to show a little bit of your personality. When I don't know you, Chris, but I know a little bit more about you now that I know your movie tastes. And so that's a way that I can connect, in a very small way. And the point is that if the more we can connect with our students, the more they're going to pay attention to us as individuals and the stuff that's coming out of our mouth or the stuff that we write to them. It's my belief that the content that we provide them, the learning experience that we provide them, they're more likely to get something out of it if they care a little bit more about the people that are trying to teach them. It makes me sad when I hear from students, oh, I don't even remember who taught me that. Yeah, I don't even know who my teacher was in that class. And it was a semester later. It's like, how does that happen? But that happens in the classroom too, which is kind of scary, in a face-to-face course. But online it happens way more because there's too many faculty that hide from the camera. They're afraid to show their personality because somewhere along the way somebody told them that was a bad thing. So there's a lot of stuff that just gets in the way of engagement. So the movies thing is an easy one. Anything content, and I love the idea, working through, living vicariously through your teenage girls. They're going to come up with content for you that would be really helpful. And then, getting students to create their own content. Can you replicate this and post it? Oh, professor just asked me to record a video. That's cool. I can do that. You're tapping into their creativity. You're tapping into their personal stuff that they like to do. So think about, how you can take that a step further. But it's good having those focus groups, the teenage girls as the focus groups. I go to my nieces. They're, 10, 11, 12, and they give me some good insight on things that I'm working on.
Excellent.
Yeah, great. Travel, back when we used to be able to travel, hopefully we have pictures that we have in our collection. We have somewhere that we could take and put it in a message to the students, on this day and 5 years ago, this September, I was here, and you could show a picture. Actually in September, it'll be 1 year since I was at a conference in Turkey, and I could find a picture from there and I could put it in a message and say, last year I did this presentation and this is what I learned. And I did a little bit, I'm teaching a marketing course this fall, and I could just include that picture, and that might help. There might be some students that have a connection to Turkey. They might have a connection to the topic. They might have a connection to just travel and just want to connect with something that I share. So all of these things matter. And what I'm really trying to get out is being strategic about this. It's one thing to just have the personality to share your personality, but I think for some faculty, they have to work a little bit harder. And so that's why I created this list. And you can put it, as we were talking about in the last session, you can put it as a little note using a text header in Canvas to say, this week, talk about XYZ. This week, talk about your favorite book. this week talk about your favorite movie, and mix it up. And you could put that in every folder as a reminder to yourself when you send out your intro email, or if you record your little mini lecture, that's something that you can address. You know, the jobs you have had part, you know, you can use that a couple of times. I remember back when I worked for Evian Water and I had to visit all these different places around the city. I didn't realize that role even existed. And you can share this little story which underscores something that you're trying to communicate in the course. These little reminders can be pretty helpful. So anyway, any questions so far or curiosities? So I've provided, let's see what else I have here.
Whoa.
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 Yeah, I went pretty far with this idea of the leaves and personality. And basically, well, part of it was learning objectives, but yeah, I didn't scribble all that. That's just an image, John, that I used because I thought it was a fun way to capture. I was really trying to communicate the importance of learning objectives for faculty, because even as I'm rewriting the syllabus for my course, they're not written very well, and they don't necessarily make sense, and they can't be measured. This one's a fun one. I don't know if I've shared this with you guys before, but it's my distance learning checklist. I took I don't know if you're familiar with the checklist manifesto, but the idea was to create one for distance learning where we just make sure that we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed to make sure that we deliver a course that makes sense. So, but all this, just, you know, feel free to check it out. It's under the resources page. You know, back to online, the personality piece. Part of it also is not just being strategic, but also finding ways to let the students show their personality. So I'll flip it now. You know, so it's one thing, obviously, you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Show your personality. That's pretty straightforward. But our students need to also get that opportunity. Thanks, Rosa. There are, you know, part of them being able to show their personality gives them a way to be part of the conversation. So when you flip the experience, the teaching experience, and empower students to teach themselves in a way, they get to show their personality. So I'll use an example. Let's say that you're doing a course on economics, okay? I'm trying to pick something that's a little bit outside of the four of us. But you're teaching a course about economics. You can create a learning activity that asks students to create a portfolio of 10 stocks that are chosen because they identify with the mission and vision of those stocks, of those companies. And so they do that, they come up with their 10 selections, and they get to present that information. What happens there is that they are totally going to be telling the rest of the class what's important to them as an individual, giving some insight to their personality. You know, if I'm going to choose 10, Ben and Jerry's might be one of mine because I love Ben and Jerry's. If I was going to look at stocks that are near and dear to my heart, if I'm an Apple fan, you know, I'm going to definitely pick Apple. You know, it's also a very good choice, but it's the point is that it's an activity that encourages the students to show who they are, and do it in front of others. And the nice thing about that is You might have students, say that there's 20 students in the class. You might have some students that have some, they look at their list and there's a lot of overlap, and they either consciously or subconsciously make the note, wait, that's somebody I should talk to. Oh my God, I need to talk to this Charlene girl because we're best friends. We're soul friends, soulmates, obviously, and they make that connection. Even if it's online, we can create connections for students. We can help them make friends, and at some point they'll get together in real life, fine. But I'll tell you, there are a lot of students that I've connected with over the years that I've never met in person. But, we talk over email, and we talk through LinkedIn on a regular basis, semi-regular basis, and we've never met. And it's all about making those connections. Another example of an assignment that you could do is something where, as we talked about before, creating their own content, whether it's a video or either an audio or a video recording, have them create something, or a montage, a PowerPoint with audio over it, where they're talking about their 5 favorite restaurants. And that's going to be a way of showing what their personality is and their interests. 3 out of the 5 are Italian restaurants. I think they like Italian food, right? Or they may use restaurants from another country where they've traveled, and that shows a little bit of their heritage and a little bit of their travel interest. And, those kinds of things, and encouraging and empowering them to show their personality. You might actually find a connection in the foot. You might say, oh, I didn't know you were about that. And then you pull out something, you're like, I spent 4 years in the Peace Corps in that country that you apparently love. And you didn't know that before. But unless we provide these opportunities for the students to show of themselves, then those connections aren't going to happen. And part of that is making the decision between different learning activities. Do you want the learning activity to just be a conversation between you and them? They write an assignment, they submit the assignment, you see the assignment, you provide feedback to that assignment. That's only between you two. Granted, you might learn something about them, but you're not allowing other students to make connections because you're the only one that's seeing it. The nice thing about a discussion board, and I actually, I'm putting just as much weight, 20% and 20% between assignments and discussion for this class. Discussions allow that to be more visible to other students. The way that I structure my discussions, 1 initial post by Wednesday, 3 responses to classmates by Friday, and then circle back to one of the responses to your post by Sunday. That encourages them to be looking at what people are posting. So if you start out with a very simple discussion to get the information flowing, and you say, what is your all-time favorite music group? Great. They post that, and another student's like, oh my God, I love them. And so they make that connection. Okay. We have a responsibility, and I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. It is now more important than ever for us to find ways to connect the students, to support the students, to make them feel like they're getting a full, rich experience. A lot of faculty are throwing in the towel, and a lot of students are throwing in the towel as well. Some of them are just going because they already paid their bill. Some of them are just going because they don't have any other options. But if we don't do it good enough this fall, I can only imagine how many students are going to transfer out. Some of them might stick around. I don't know. But we improve our chances of keeping them and giving them a good foundation by being more engaging, by providing those, sharing our personalities in both directions. Do you all have any examples of how you've traditionally shared your personality in courses? John, you like to tell stories, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I usually work in the Ohio State Buckeyes, and always in the first class, I ask if is anyone here from Michigan,
Uh,
um, and only once has that ever happened. It was a student at Hofstra, and that student, when Ohio State beat Michigan again the following year, this was a year after the course. The student emailed me and said, "Congratulations, you blankety blanks." So
yeah.
that's something, sports. And the interesting thing is too, and this was in copy editing class. Um, I brought in I was talking about the Buckeyes or nasty old, that Clemson, for God's sake. But I always have it's a 3-hour class. I always call about a 20-minute break in the middle of the 3 hours so people can get down, get a cup of coffee or whatever. That's when we're face to face. But I noticed that this one semester, there were men and women didn't take the break. That when I left the room to go get my coffee, they were talking about sports. And when I came back, they were still talking about sports. And some of them were in sports management, or they're going to be sports reporters. So that's one thing. And, the also to talk about, copy editors are generally hated. And I know when I was told to be a copy editor instead of a reporter, I went kicking and screaming. And what I found out was that if you're a copy editor, you're a team player. It's a team thing, and you really get to know the people you're working with, and you have a sense of pride. If you're a reporter, you're a lone wolf. You're out there working on your own, and so that was another thing to relate from experience. But yeah, there's just a couple examples.
No, that's great. And I just want to key in on the one, perfect illustration, because you made that one simple connection with Ohio State and Michigan. You had a student that reached out to you a year later.
Oh yeah.
Which is fantastic. And that student's never going to forget you because of that.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the things that we do in face-to-face instruction is just kind of natural. It's not natural for everybody, but it's natural for a good amount. And we do these things and we don't realize how important they actually are with making those connections with the students. And if a student gets a hold of you more than a semester later, and not just about changing a grade or something, then that's a testament to the fact that, we did something right. And I don't know if you noticed, but I was really enjoying my little Clemson, thing.
I noticed.
Okay.
I noticed.
Um,
That's why you made me wear this stupid y'all hat instead of my Buckeye hat. I've never heard you say, "Where's your damn Buckeye hat?" We don't get that.
I like you. I like
you understand that Clemson is the new Michigan.
Yeah.
For Buckeye fans, by the way, forget about Michigan. They're hopeless. We've got a real team, a team we've never beaten, the only one, Clemson. And we won't beat you this year because you're playing and we're not.
Oh, that's kind of a de facto. No, I think that it's. I love the illustration because it's so dead on. Rosa, is there an example that you can think of how you show your personality with your students?
Well, when I'm teaching, I always teach in-person classes, and I use a lot of my way being a student affair person, because student affairs, like I've been working for like almost 20 years, and that either being resourceful, being energetic, always there for students, and that kind of energy. That's why I brought up my personality to them, and also kind of emphasize like it doesn't matter, you need or you don't, being resourceful, it's always a skill.
Yeah, I think student affairs, I would not be a a better instructor if it wasn't for student affairs, because you just are required to interact and to energize and to connect with students. It's really fantastic. I know that just the ability to talk to students and to realize who they are and where they're coming from, they appreciate you recognizing them as an individual. You know, that's why it's important at the beginning of the course to do some questions to kind of see where people are coming from. And I know I shared last week the survey that I sent out to all of my students. If they know that we know what their situation is, some of their struggles, they feel like they're not in it by themselves. And part of that sharing of your personality is sharing that part of your personality that you care. You know, there are way too many faculty that are in and out. You know, they go in, they teach their course, and I mean, either remote, hybrid, face-to-face, whatever, they're in and they're out. You know, they don't really do the office hours. Their focus might be their full-time job, and they're just, you know, doing this as on the side to make a little bit extra cash. Students don't feel like they matter in those situations. You know, if the faculty came and stick around for 5 minutes to deal with something, but I'll leave my Zoom session open at the end if anybody wants to stick around and just talk about a couple things. You know, that might be the time kind of creating that same dynamic that exists in a face-to-face class where some students hang back a little bit to talk to you about something. Hey, you know, Professor Long, I'm thinking about applying for an internship at this newspaper. Do you know anything about it? Do you know anything about them? You know, if you don't share this part of your personality that you care enough to do that, then they're not gonna engage, and you're gonna miss that opportunity. So that's another way of doing it. I know that Rosa's really good at that. I know that, you know, I've known her for years, and the way that she interacts with her students, and they seek her out very much. That's an important piece. How about you, Chris? What's any ways that you've shown your personality in the past?
Well, I mean, I generally, I'm going to just, I'll share this about it, and it may not be what you're looking for. I have traditionally been a rather formal professor. And I generally have this hope. I mean, one of the reasons I became a college professor is that I was interested in the subject matter. And that's not to say that I thought that that was exclusive with building relationships with the students. In fact, I think those are mutually reinforcing. But yeah, at times I struggle because I don't want to be a guru. And I guess that is something that in the subject I teach, theology, is a particular temptation and or problem. In other words, I teach Catholic theology at St. John's to a student population, the majority of whom are not Catholic. Mm-hmm. And over and above religious identification, we know that religion is one of the flashpoints for many people. And so revealing my personality has often been sort of, you know, trying to introduce humor into the classroom, sort of a commitment to seminar style education when class size permits it. But I have to say that a lot of times my preferred model of a professor is the end of, and again, here's another archaic movie reference, the end of Bing Crosby's Going My Way. When, like, at the end of the semester, as unrealistic as it may sound, I want the students to be interested in the subject matter. Maybe they won't be majors, they're not going to be specialists, almost all of them. And if they forget me, but they learn and are interested, or they realize why the subject matter was valuable, I'm okay with that. Now, like I said, I don't think that's dichotomous, you know, but it's a challenge because I don't want to make the course about me. So I try to look for these ways of sort of inserting contemporary hooks, or, you know, wearing Mets or Yankees caps in class to show the difference between historical critical interpretation of the Bible and theological interpretation. You know, one year I sort of play acted roles that you might have in a religious conversation. But I will admit that that tends to be ornamental in relation to the course structure. Like, as I'm putting the finishing touches on my syllabi right now, you know, it's pretty much the content comes first, and then my job in reviewing myself is to fit into that. Now, part of this is the fact that this is a core course, you know, and students will have requirements beyond it. But yeah, this is, I make no pretense to having solved this issue.
No, but you're, you know, just in the few examples that you provided, you're doing the personality work, and it's, I think you have a great opportunity because of the way that you're approaching the course to make connections for the students that they may not realize exist. And especially, you know, I love the fact that there's students from other religions that are taking the course, but it's an opportunity to make those connections for them so that they could, you know, get that little bit of curiosity. So by the end of the course, they still want to learn more, or at least their eyes are open to the possibilities. And when they see a movie, they're going to think back, oh, that's what he was talking about. You know, they'll make those connections. So I mean, of course, you talk about wearing different caps. That's always a good one for me, because I think that does a number of things for the course. I think the biggest opportunity for you, based on just, you know, 45 minutes of conversation, at least in this session, is this idea that there are examples and illustrations within pop culture that the students can relate to better than maybe the ones that are our go-tos. You know, I've felt it for the last few years that my references make less and less of an impact because I'm just too old. You know, they don't have the same, they don't even know half the stuff that I'm talking about. And so I've had to update my examples. And I'll give you a very specific example from a course I taught years ago. It was a leadership and management course that I taught at Indiana State. And I remember the original example was to talk about Pele as the soccer football star. And I remember the first time sharing that example with the students, and they just looked at me like, who the hell is Pele? You know? And it's just crazy for some, you know, people of a certain age to be like, you don't know who Pele is? And then of course I had to update it to Michael Jordan, and that made total sense. And then over the years, it was the King James or Tiger Woods. You find that example that hits, that makes sense. And what I've done more and more over the years is I've used learning activities, or I've constructed learning activities in such a way that it gives me material for the next semester. So when you have the student come up with their version of what you're talking about, then it's like, oh, you have 15 examples that now you can use in the following semester, where you might be referencing music, you know, like A$AP Rocky, you know, and before it might have been, you know, LL Cool J would have been the example. And then they're like, oh, you mean that guy that's on CSI or whatever the show, NCIS, that he plays? They forget that he's a rap legend. But if you bring it to a more modern, frame, they're like, oh yeah, we get it. We know what you're talking about. We know who that is. And they're probably on there listening to them as we speak. So I think there's a lot of ways for us to make connections with the students. And a lot of it is just like letting go a little bit of that perceived need for professionalism. And I think the more, we have to redefine what professionalism in education is sometimes from an educator perspective. To be a professional educator it's not about wearing a suit and tie and, being that. It's about engagement. And I know that there's a variety of opinions about that, but I know plenty of professors in their pajamas that have made a bit better, bigger impact with their students than the faculty member who is in a three-piece suit every time that they met. Not that they just remember them because they're wearing pajamas, but they related to the students in such a way, they showed their personality in such a way that that's the professor that they called years later for a reference or for advice versus the three-piece suit person who is just there to do what they do and then leave. So I think we can keep growing in that way. And I'm still finding ways to show my personality and to connect with students. And it changes every semester because it's different students. The 40 students that I have in this particular class this semester, I don't know any of them. They've never seen me. They've never interacted with me. And then I'll get another group next semester. And maybe some of them will carry forward, but I'm gonna have to find new ways to connect with them based on what I learn about them through surveys and interactions, the stuff that I read from them. So, any last questions or comments from you guys and gal?
I think things are changing, and with regard to what we've been talking about today, because I just remembered something that I was told by probably more than one department head in my 8 or 9 years of teaching. Mm-hmm. And that was, John, your job is not to make the students like you, And so I would find myself feeling a little bit guilty from time to time because of just naturally engaging with the students, So I just think that's changing, at least from what you're. I mean, if you're an example of what should be done these days, then things are changing.
Well, I think I'm really glad you brought that up because there's always been something that I've adhered to since I started in higher ed, and that's the idea of being friendly, not friends, and wanting to be liked versus respected. I see wanting to be liked and showing your personality as two different things. It's not. Yes. I don't necessarily want to be liked, but I want to provide those opportunities for connections. And if they like something about one of my personality traits or something that I'm into, great. They like the fact that I like a certain group, that's fine. But I don't need them to like me. I need them to like the things that I'm interested in enough to pay more attention to the course and to get more out of the course. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up.
Differentiation.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Chris?
I just want to thank you for some very helpful sessions. As far as personality goes, the big thing I'm going to face today is whether I cut my hair before I do my intro video. Now, normally I would do that, but I think I'm going to go for some baseball caps instead.
No, that's great. And then you can, one of the things that I have, actually, I'll put this in the chat. because it's kind of my super secret thing that I created. I created a whole document to bring out people's personalities. And I almost forgot to send it to y'all. There you go. That's the link. TeachingMVP.com/ML as in Mad Libs. So I created a variation on Mad Libs to bring out some fun personality things. It's pretty funny. I think it's pretty funny, but then again, I'm biased because I created it. But I think, you know, one of the ideas, you know, using the baseball cap as a thing, it's great. If you really want to have fun with the students, you could, you know, for people that have a mustache and beard, they can shave. My dad did this to my mom before I was born, but he shaved off half. And he said, which do you prefer? And it's not like you can go back on that. So I think it's a funny way to mess with your students a little bit. And that's part of it, is just being human. You know, human is good. So I think with that, we will close. Definitely check out that link, fill out that Mad Lib. It's funny. I think if you go through all the steps, and I definitely want to hear about that. And I look forward to hearing about the first classes and how that goes. I know, John, you have your first one in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'll look forward to hearing how that goes for you. All right.
Sure. Okay.
All right, y'all.
All righty.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Bye, guys.
Everybody.
All right.
Bye.